Hyssop, Hyssopus, right? Hyssopus officinalis. Here we have another officinalis plant, right? What's that mean again? Oh, you guys remember that, right? When we see officinalis, this means it was officially an approved medication or approved herbal medicine or official species of medicinal activity that even the botanists recognized when they wrote all the Latin terms. So it's been used for a long time, right? So we're also distilling, or we're also diffusing the essential oil of hyssop, which I love. You could diffuse a tincture, there's not that many essential oils in it though. So this would be one of our hyssop. To make this easy, remember who makes the best aromatherapist? Herbalist, right? Because we know the plants. A lot of aromatherapists just write, even the famous ones, they just write. They've never like necessarily even seen patients. And you know, when you start to like actually network through the world, do you realize most people that write books don't ever use what they're talking about. So there's very few like really practicing aromatherapists in the world. There's like a handful of them. So I still think herbalists make the best aromatherapists because it's all the same properties for the plant we're talking about, right? We're just talking about most of its topical uses or a lot of its diffusing uses. So everything we talk about today for the essential oil and the actual plant is going to be fairly similar. So I don't confuse you and might move back and forth a little bit here. Okay. But I will pass around the actual herb. Is hyssop a special herb? Super special, right? It's one of the what I call X factor herbs, meaning it has thousands of potential undiscovered uses and properties that we've only scratched the surface with. And it's very underappreciated. Like lady's mantle, no one's ever forgotten about history since biblical times, right? Even before that, right? Going back to like Old Testament times. It's never been forgotten, but it's also like lady's mantle, never been super popular, but it should be. So I'll pass the actual cut herb around. Is that from Shay? Oh, yay. That's fun. This is a really easy one to grow in your yard, by the way. It just turns into like a little shrub thing, keeps coming back forever. I think this smells really unique, right?
So where would you get one?
You'd have to get it from one of those medicinal places we mentioned. Horizon Herbs. Yeah. I'll pass around the essential oil. I love the smell of the essential oil. It's very camphorous. So why is this hyssop such an X factor plant? Meaning to me, it's really underutilized. It has huge potential. It has huge current known properties. It has a huge ancient history, like very documented, right? Some really cool historical documents, right? Why? Why is it such an X factor herb otherwise? What about its smell tells us that it's special? Or taste, when you taste it. You don't taste that property as much, but you can feel it in your body, right? So number one, when you taste it, it has a little bit of what I call a searching energy, a searching property, meaning it has kind of like lobelia or other catalyst. It has the ability to search and go deeply through our body to the deepest parts of ourselves to find what is diseased or sick. This includes emotions, like for people that are having extremely deep-seated emotions that they can't process or get through, or physical trauma you can't process or get through, spiritual trauma you can't process or get through. So it has this what we call searching energy, what I call searching energy. But it has, when you smell it live in nature, it's the best smell. It has this combination of skunkiness and camphorness, that when we smell plants that have that property, they're extremely rare and very unique. So this skunky camphorous smell is indicative of a lot of compounds that basically go deeper than your ordinary herb. The deeper moving, deeper penetrating. That's a key theme with hyssop: deeper moving, deeper penetrating, deeper everything. So how this shows up is this is an antiviral. What kind of virus or what kind of situations with viruses is this going to be the best for, though? For chronic, long-term viruses, or where you feel like you're on the infection merry-go-round, right? You have your infection, you get over it, it just comes back again in a couple months, and you're just constantly going through this cycle of infection after infection. Or you have something really deep-seated like herpes virus, or something that's always kind of like hidden deep in your system and then reemerges whenever you get weak. Like herpes does, right? It really likes to strike when we get stressed and our immune system gets down a little bit. HPV is kind of like that, right? So this would be, but anywhere, whether you have like chronic respiratory viruses, chronic intestinal viruses, chronic viruses, or things like shingles, right?
Makes them go away.
It does. It helps you, it helps the body to really change the constitution at a deeper level, penetrate a little deeper. So we have fever remedies like diaphoretics, but this was what we call second level remedy for fevers. Meaning you've had a fever for a while, maybe you did Tylenol or Advil, or maybe you did herbs instead, and it gets better and then it kind of comes back and spikes and kind of keeps going. Or you've had it maybe for a really long period of time, like if smallpox and like real serious diseases, like some people had that with COVID. So like a really long-term fever for sometimes a week or multiple weeks at a time. This is what we're going to do. A lot of people with COVID had fever, had to take, like Tylenol or Advil every single day. And if they try to stop it for a day because they thought the fever was done, it would just come back in like 8 to 12 hours. So this is again for this idea that something is not really getting deep enough, right? You're helping the fever, but it's not going away. So this is for second level fevers, also meaning the fever's moving deeper. We kind of talked about that with, we did diaphoretics or not yet? Oh no. So we'll see with diaphoretics, like when people get infections, they move to the first level where we get like chills and sweats and aches and stiff neck, right? But the second level of infection or feverish response is where people get really anxious. They get restless at night, right? Think of when you had like a severe flu and you're like sick. You just want to lay there and you just lay there all night, like thrashing about, like whining and whimpering, and like just like your mind's racing and your body's like completely wiped out, but your nervous system's kind of irritated. And then it goes deeper, right? Then it will go into like getting like severely lethargic, getting like severe brain fog, This will often happen when people get like meningitis, right? Then you start to get like severe headaches. You can even get non-responsive if the fever gets too high or goes too deep. So this is what we're going to do is like a next level when normal things aren't working for us. The good thing about Hyssop 2 that's really amazing is it's super safe. You can give it to infants, you can give it to kids. There's really no danger in it. There's no known medication that it interacts with that we know of. That's exciting. So even though it's like a strongish plant as far as medicinal traits, it's really gentle. It's really safe. I don't know if it's safe for animals or not, but okay. So its energy is slightly warming from that skunky flavor, and it's a little bit drying. However, a lot of people feel this is one of our first bivalent herbs. I kind of feel like this is a true bivalent herb. Remember that term? Bivalent means it's kind of neutral. And when you take it, it goes which direction you need it. Like it can be a little more warming or it can be a little more cooling. Again, meaning you just can't go wrong. Period. Can't go wrong. Okay. So we would use this this is not for bacteria. We're not talking about bacteria infections. We're not talking about UTIs. We're not talking about like bacterial bronchitis. We're talking only viruses here. Okay. Any kind of virus, cold, flu, COVID, cold sores, herpes, shingles, right? Any of those things are going to be super, super specific for. Okay. But especially herpes. This is also one of our top topical remedies for cold sores. HPV, genital herpes, any kind of a virus that's going to cause like a blistering type sensation, which shingles can sometimes do. This is why it's one of our best shingles remedies topically and internally. Okay. Everybody's with me so far? So this is going to dive to the deepest level of our body. It's going to push out. It's going to open our pores at a deeper level. So it is a diaphoretic. So it is going to induce a sweat response. But it is also a true fever reducing remedy, like it moves deeper. So this would be for onset of any kind of fevers. We don't have to know what virus it is. We can give it no matter what. Any kind of a virus with a fever. Or any kind of virus that's long-term and chronic that we're struggling with. This is a traditional parasite cleansing herb, right? There's a lot of uses in ancient days. You'll see more parasitic properties. But again, compared to most parasite killing plants are really harsh and bitter and intense. This is actually really mild. So it'd be safe for children, safe for infants, safe for adults. This is one of the ways it was used in biblical times. We know this herb has been used for a long time for leprosy, topically and internally. In fact, a lot of ancient Jewish writings describe the actual ritual that you use this for with leprosy. It's kind of cool. I guess it helped a lot. There's a whole protocol for it that's still known, still written about today. I don't know if rabbis still do this or not, but yeah. You can even Google Hyssop and like a bunch of rabbi articles will come up on it. It's kind of cool. Okay, so everybody's following me so far. It's also Again, with the lungs, it is an expectorant for chronic mucus. Here's what's weird about it. Even though it's drying a little bit, it's good for a dry cough or a wet cough. It's good for everything. Remember I said it's always a safe answer. But again, this is going to be especially good for what kind of mucus? Stuck mucus that you feel like isn't responding to drugs or other herbs, that's really chronic, really persistent, and just, or people who have weak lungs who just seems like every month or two they're getting mucus buildup. We know as herbalists, like if that mucus sticks there long enough, you're going to get an infection sooner or later, right? So this would be good for the deepest, most stuck mucus that's in the lungs, and it can be used for a dry or wet cough. Same with the ears. This is one of the few true ear remedies for ear infections, fluid in the ears, viruses that create like dizziness and vertigo because of how they affect the ears, or chronic ear infections where it seems like kids or adults are on this chronic cycle of ear infection after ear infection after ear infection. Okay, it's also a very important remedy for viruses that affect the throat, like the virus that is going around right now that is kind of unnamed, right? It's not COVID, it's not influenza, it's just a virus, is what doctors will say. But it really like lingers in people's throat, creates like a sore throat. So this would be used for tonsillitis, any kind of virus where you have a sore throat or lose your voice. By the way, what do we call it medically when you lose your voice? If you're reading old textbooks, right? We call it aphonia. So phonia, I think, is, I don't know, speaking or words. So A would be like without. Aphonia. A lot of old British textbooks will say aphonia. Okay. You would drink it internally or take it internally as a tincture or a tea. You can, I think, maybe find hyssop in a capsule still, but it's not very common. But you can definitely get the tea and the tincture, and the essential oil is very common. So you could put the essential oil, you can massage it around the ear and the glands. So typically, here's a good trick to know. If you ever have an ear infection, or your child does, or you do, you treat both ears no matter what, because I guarantee you it's the most bizarre thing ever. It's impossible, but somehow if you treat the right ear and it gets better, it just instantly goes to the left ear. It's the weirdest thing. It's humanly not possible, but I don't know how many times I've seen that. You see it in dogs too? I don't know how, because I don't know how that works. It's just weird. So whenever you have an ear infection, you just do both ears. So you would massage them in your inner ear that's diluted, right? The essential oil, all around your ear and all down your lymph glands. This is one of our traditional chest rubs, topically, right? Kind of like Vicks or mentholatum. So you would dilute it in some olive oil and you would rub the front of your chest for a lung infection and the back of your upper back. And you rub on your lymph glands and your neck, you just kind of massage the whole upper body, right?
So the people have had tubes put in their ears, because when they were a kid, they got like bunch of infections, so they just put tubes in their ears. That doesn't actually treat the problem.
Right.
It addresses the symptoms. So even as an adult, they could probably benefit.
Sure. Yeah, because usually people that have tubes, it just doesn't, necessarily solve everything. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this would be for especially viral ear infections, or when you have too much like congestion of fluids in and around the ear. Earwax, it would be helpful for. Yeah. It's good to get that earwax removed, right? or at least watch it on YouTube. It's really fun. Yeah, you wouldn't necessarily put drops of hyssop into the ear, but you would massage. You could massage it. It sounds like it wouldn't do a lot, but just putting the essential oil on a cotton ball and just putting in the ear, even though it doesn't get to the bottom of the ear canal, it's really helpful. And massaging all around, that's really helpful. Okay. Okay. So we're talking any kind of viral lung infection. Okay. Next area, we're not done yet. It is a digestive bitter and the carminative that we'll talk about today. This is why it's often used in a lot of ancient cooking and recipes, religious, cultural traditions, right? Because it has a digestive effect as a digestive bitter. Okay. And why wouldn't it, right? It's bitter, it's a little bit carminative, it's got a little bit of that skunky flavor. I don't use it a lot as a digestive bitter, but I do use it a lot for intestinal and stomach viruses, which is very good for. And like we said, parasites. Okay. So this would be historically, this is a good remedy when you need a digestive bitter and somebody also has a nervous stomach. But like when I see that combination, I tend to think more of something like chamomile though anyway. I think chamomile would be better for that, but hyssop would have more killing property, right? This is a great herb for, what's the term? The SIBO, right? But he knows the term, we mentioned it a couple times, SIBO, right? So you got small intestine bacterial overgrowth. You're basically gassy, bloated, leaky guts, often like part of that. But you have like some negative kind of fermentation in your gut. This is like a really good SIBO remedy. Right? So historically, this is a diuretic. I have never really used it that way, but historically it is. Okay. The other way we use this a lot is for the nervous system. So this is a nervine for anxiety and stress. It's especially good when viruses are damaging the nerves, like when people get shingles, right? Or sometimes herpes can be so bad it can damage the nerves and that too. Or chicken pox or something like that, right? So this is a really good nerve remedy, and one of the way I use it mostly for that is for when we have the signature for this is when people have tremors and twitches, which is how a lot of more serious nerve disorders start, right? You have convulsions, like with epilepsy. This is one of our best herbs for epilepsy and seizures, one of the all-time best, one of the top 4. Or when people come in and they have like this, right? The tremor, the twitch. Parkinson's, we use it like with MS and Parkinson's, Tourette's, people that have impulse control disorders. Yeah, so it is used to, it's not like a memory herb per se, but it does really clear out everything in the body so much. Hyssop will often create kind of like rosemary, like a really clear mind. But it's not a traditional like Alzheimer's or dementia remedy though, that we know of. I mean, it could be shown to do that though. Okay, so this is a good anxiety herb, but remember, its ancient tradition is to cleanse emotionally and spiritually, right? This was used in all the temples and synagogues, right? It was used to cleanse, to sanctify meat, to bless meat, right? And the Bible talks about dipping hyssop in lamb's blood, right? And putting over the doorway, right? That's like a very important, there's a lot of references to it for its cleansing, purifying effects. So hyssop has this emotional, spiritual, purifying effect. So it's going to be very good for people who are basically anxious and are having like some real heavy emotions. It may be like a spiritual crisis. Or maybe people who have what we call like an attachment, right? You've gotten a lot of negative energy, you're picking up on negative people in your life, or maybe you have even more powerful like attachments, right? Spiritual attachments or something. Okay, so it's historically used a lot for grief and depression also. Okay, but it is good for concentration and focus, but there's just no research that it helps memory like rosemary or ginkgo, but it just hasn't been researched in that way. Okay. It's a really good first aid remedy to know together with licorice, because this is one of the old ways you lived if you were poisoned. So it's used a lot for poisoning historically. You were poisoned intentionally with heavy metals, other poisonous plants. So it has some kind of like a toxin neutralizing effect. We don't use it that way much anymore, but I think it's important to remember that. Probably needs to be researched more. It is one of the best herbs I have ever seen for people who are sensitive to EMFs, to electromagnetic frequencies. You're sensitive to cell phones, Bluetooth, internet, right? I had this super rich client who was so cool, who moved to Austin. Her whole house was EMF free. All the electrical wires were hand wrapped in wool by the electricians. Like, I mean, she went through like all the walls had like EMF liners built into the walls. So like any electrical outlets had EMF like covers on them. Like it was like electromagnetic free home. Yeah. Very cool. You didn't, when you went in, you would never notice that. It just looks like a regular house. Plus, you knew how rich she was, and you're like, something has to be more fancy about this house, you know.
You said it was a nervine and a digestive and a carminative.
And a diaphoretic, a fever remedy, a nervine, yeah, kind of an antidepressant. It's a lot. And it's something you can grow so easy, and it's a perennial, it comes back forever. Okay. If you like to drink chartreuse, this is how chartreuse is flavored. All of our aperitifs have some herbal secret history, right? Okay. So, bless you. Let's go into the psychological. So this is obviously going to be like an herb of rejuvenation, cleansing, renewal on a more emotional, spiritual level, right? So this is a really good herb for healing really heavy emotions, heavy thoughts. heavy traumas that people just can't seem to process and move through. Again, kind of like with mucus that's stuck, or like if there's a virus that's stuck. This is like when you're just kind of emotionally have hit a place where you just feel stuck and frustrated, despite how much work you're putting out, right? Never seen it really have a lot of crises though either. That's what's kind of weird about it. It's kind of gentle and smooth. Yeah. 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 You could. It's a great tea, like spouse and family would probably drink this, if you put a little lavender, a little something with it, a little honey, right? Okay, it's also really good for cleansing old heavy thoughts when we need to like re-envision our entire new life. So when we diffuse it, this is like a great way if somebody doesn't like to burn smudge, this is a smudge. You can diffuse the essential oil, or you can just put it in a spray bottle. This is like a great sick room spray to kill viruses that are airborne. In mold also, I've used it for mold. And it's also good for emotionally clearing a room, like if you're a massage therapist and you can't burn sage where you work, or you work in another office space, this is like a great smudge for germs and emotions, both. I think it smells really good. Okay. So this is long considered a sacred herb, an herb of protection, right? Has a long history, religious history of being used with like baptisms, which would be like symbolic of that cleansing effect. Okay. Questions on it? It's one of those herbs that, you kind of forget about for a long period of time. Then you're like, just the right person comes along and then you use it every day for like a month because you're like, why am I not using this herb every day? Everybody needs this herb. We all need it. So it's just a really, really very, very cool herb. So it's not, but it could be because it is somewhat lymph cleansing. I think it's in first defense, I think. So, okay.
If you were using it for like cold sores or herpes, things like that, is it more you take preventative or do you take it more after somebody has?
This would be more, you could do it preventatively when you're having like a recurrent cycle and you just want to like stop the cycle. You could take it long term, it's very safe. You can do it indefinitely, but we would also do like a higher amount, like if there's like an active outbreak and you put it on topical and it really helps quite a bit. It just burns though, like when you put it on a cold sore or something, it kind of burns a little bit. Okay. It's helpful for PTSD if people are in a real kind of dark place over it. Yeah. I'll pass around the little Hyssop card. And when you see it, it just looks, it's kind of cutie, but it's not like super, it's not like blazing star or peony. It doesn't like jump out at you. It's very, very interesting. So, but yeah, there's all kinds of historical reference to this in the Bible. Egyptian writings mention it. A lot of ancient Jewish writings mention it. It's so documented historically. There's a lot of historical all the Greeks wrote about it from the very beginning. So we have a really long history of one of the most common herbs in ancient times. So it is a trauma herb too. Topically, we use it for bruising and trauma. Oh, the other thing I forgot about it, it's really good for fibromyalgia. Topically in the muscles is like a rub, and then internally too. Very cool herb. You could combine it with arnica and calendula. Use it by itself. I haven't really used it a lot for bruising, but I should. I mean, it's one of those herbs we should be using more. It's not known to be toxic during pregnancy, but again, I personally don't do many herbs during pregnancy. But it's not known to be toxic, but I would still personally not do it. It's a very historical, a lot of Greeks made a wine out of this. They would drink this kind of all the time to help prevent diseases and getting sick from rotten food and stuff like that. Okay. So there's some historical debate as to if this is the actual herb that is in the Bible or not. So nobody knows for sure, but a lot of people think the hyssop from the Bible is an herb called zatar, which is an oregano species that's related to hyssop. Other people think the actual herb from the Bible and the older Jewish writings would be a type of savory, the herb savory. Or it could be actual hyssop. There's just kind of like a little bit of controversy about it. Nobody knows for sure. So, okay. Okay, this is a great herb. We would use this again as an essential oil. We would diffuse this anytime somebody has a viral infection, especially with coughing and this is one of the best herbs to diffuse right by your bed when you have like a lung infection or a sinus virus. It's very helpful. Every time I've used this for my kids at night when they've been sick, they wake up feeling so much better. It's like 100% effective on my my children. So, and there's really good as like a back rub in that too. Okay. Okay, any other questions on it?
Sinus virus or sinus infection?
Sinus virus. Again, it's only good for viruses, not bacteria though. Okay. Cool herb, huh? You probably have any people have heard of it or used it before. It's like just one of those herbs that it just doesn't get a lot of attention. A lot of herbalists don't use it. Thankfully, it's really common in a garden setting. So we're not like, I'm not fearful we'll lose this herb or anything. It's just so common. Any other questions on it? You can also burn it like sage to fumigate a room too. Like if you don't have the essential oil, you can just burn it like sage once it's dried. Okay. No other questions? The smell of it's nice. The essential oil is really nice. It's a little bit eucalyptus-like, right? But just, yeah, when you smell it, did you put it up to your nose, everybody, and smell it? It's like really just almost makes your mind kind of like clear a little bit. At least it does to me. You do kind of feel it in your stomach a little bit though. It's a good feeling. Okay, any questions on hyssop? Okay. So I should say with really serious nerve diseases like MS and ALS and end-stage Parkinson's, I haven't like seen it do anything amazing, but like in the early stage, it's really helpful for like reversing the tremors and the beginning of that. Okay. Definitely safer than like CBD for kids that are having seizures and that. Yeah, I remember, I think I told you about this infant that I saw that had birth trauma. And the dad kind of left the mom. She was like a teen pregnancy. It was like a really sad story. And the baby was like the age of my older daughter at the time. So like when I saw this baby like this sick, I just like, oh, like it was just so emotional on me. Like I could barely even look at this baby. It was so sad because I was having like something like 30 to 100 seizures per hour from the brain trauma from a guy who was in the birth canal too long and that had head trauma. But the mom, we'd got the seizures down to something like about 5 to 10 an hour, which was like dramatic. In just like a couple months, like a really short time. Hyssop was one of the main herbs we used in skullcap. It was not a super complex formula or dose. And this was like before CBD was legal in Nebraska. And yeah, she'd moved out to Colorado to do CBD. And I did like a phone follow up with her. And, you know, people just get so pigeonholed on like something. So she quit doing everything from us after she moved out there. And she was still doing CBD, even though the baby was having more seizures than on the herbal formula. I was trying to convince her to, you know, like do both together to get even better results. But she was just so like a believer that, you know, like marijuana was like the cure all to everything, or hemp, you know, like some people just get into that. So she just wouldn't, I don't know whatever happened to the baby. I didn't follow up much after that. But it was pretty miraculous. It was mostly just hyssop and skullcap. Okay, we're gonna close the notes on hyssop then. Anybody getting any reaction in your body or feeling from the hyssop? No, nothing? Really? Nobody's getting anything interesting? Okay. It's a really good bath herb when you're feeling like you got a really feeling just anxious and depressed and like just kind of like you got a funky energy you can't shake. Just, you know, like you had a bad week. You just feel like, why is everything bad happening this week? You start to get like paranoid, you know, like what's going on? What's going on with the universe this week? Hyssop is a good thing to just get in the bath with it. Just get it into the bath. Okay. Let's close the chapter on Hyssopus officinalis.